There are on record numerous incidents in which dogs have shown an almost human sensitivity. More startling than these, however, is the strange and tragic story of a dog, Hamlet, whose awareness, whose perception, proved to be nothing less than superhuman.
In the daily routine of the Rockwell household, where Hamlet the dog made his home, there was only one event which succeeded in arousing him from his customary brooding lethargy. That was young Ruth Rockwell's return home from the city college each afternoon. And so, on that fatal evening in November of 1929, when Ruth came into the house with a strange, preoccupied expression and an unnatural glint in her eyes, Hamlet jumped up from his favorite spot before the fireplace and came bounding toward her. But the girl ignored him this time and walked straight upstairs to her room. When she had removed her coat, she sat down at her desk and began to write.
And I know it will be a terrible blow to you, and you will grieve for me. But even though I am dead, don't think that you will never hear from me again. Every night, at exactly 9 o'clock, I will try to come back to you.
A few miles away at the Curtis airfield, a young flight instructor was warming up his plane, preparing to take off. He was to give Ruth Rockwell her first lesson in night flying. And at length she appeared and took her place behind the dual controls. When the plane had risen several hundred feet into the air and was circling over the field, Ruth Rockwell suddenly climbed up on the cockpit cowling, and while the instructor gasped in horror, she stepped calmly out into the empty blackness and went plunging to her death. It was early the following morning when her grief-stricken father found the note lying on the pillow. With tears streaming down his cheeks, he read it aloud to her mother, and then he folded it and put it away. That evening, even though they knew that she was gone forever, as the hour of 9 approached, both of them found themselves growing tense and expectant. Mr. Rockwell and his wife would have spoken if they could, but that was impossible. For both knew that now they were awaiting something. As the clock began to strike, they leaned intently forward, their every sense alert. 9 strokes, and it was then, at that very moment, that the dog Hamlet jumped suddenly to his feet, bounded toward the door, barking wildly, his tail wagging, exactly as if he were greeting someone who had just entered.
He's never done that before, except when Ruth walked into this room.
From that night on, throughout the weeks and months that followed, the same remarkable thing occurred. They had no choice but to conclude that somehow Ruth had kept her promise. That though they themselves were unaware of her presence, still she had returned in some mysterious form. A form incredible but true.
As the creator and producer of the Incredible but True series, it is not within my province to judge our stories, only to report them as accurately and as faithfully as I can. And so, in this moving account of little Luigi Pannoni, I offer you no conclusions. Make of it what you will. Ken?
They lived on the west side of New York, the Pannoni family. Mother and son and grandfather. And they lived happily until that bitter day, shortly after Luigi's 4th birthday, when he was stricken with the dread paralysis germ.
It might have been better if he had died. He cannot see, he cannot hear, he cannot talk. What kind of a life is that?
Mrs. Pannoni consulted specialists. But one after another, they shook their heads gravely and explained that only a miracle could restore the boy's faculties.
That's what the doctors say, Father. They can do nothing for him. Only a miracle can make him well again.
Luigi's grandfather turned very pale. And Mrs. Pannoni noticed that when he arose from his chair a moment later, his whole body seemed to be shaking. And that night, after the family had retired, she heard a cry from her father's room.
Nina! Nina! Come quick.
She leaped from her bed and rushed out into the hall. And on the threshold of his room, she found him lying. He had suffered a stroke. The grief, the sorrow, had been more than he could bear. The weeks passed. And then, on a certain morning in August, Mrs. Pannoni approached her father's bed and bent over him to catch the words that he was trying so desperately to utter.
Nina, sometimes when the man is dying, he's a pray. And God hears his prayer. Nina?
Yes, sometimes, Father, but...
Well, now I am praying. You hear me, Nina? Oh, God, make little Luigi well again. Make him to hear again, and see again, and talk again. This I ask you before I die. Take me, oh God, but make little Luigi. Make him...
She knew he was gone. She knew there was nothing anyone could do for him now. And yet, she arose and moved toward the door to call for help. But at that moment, the door flew open.
Mama! Luigi! Mama, I can talk again. And I can see and I can hear. It happened just now. I was sitting in my room and... Mama, what's happened to Grandpapa?
Yes, at the moment that the old man's last breath was being spent in a final prayer for the boy's recovery, Luigi Pannoni suddenly regained the use of his faculties, of all his senses. And the doctors had no explanation for it. They could only call it a miracle. Incredible, but true.
If the police magistrate seemed to act too hastily in the matter, he is scarcely to be blamed. For after all, if madness, even a harmless madness, did fall within his province, it was his duty to see to it that the poor afflicted person was removed to an institution. And in view of the story that Madame Blorati told him, what earthly reason could he have had to think her sane?
It was on the last day of April in the year 1907 that Madame Blorati called on the police magistrate in his office. And the magistrate had no cause to suspect that there was anything abnormal about her.
I wish to register a complaint.
Very well, madame. Against whom?
I do not know. I have never seen the person, and I have not the slightest idea of who or what he is.
I see. And this unknown person?
He lives in our apartment.
In your apartment? But you've never seen him?
No, never.
Oh. What, if I may ask, is your complaint against him?
He makes us walk on our hands.
I beg your pardon. What did you say?
I said he makes us walk on our hands. My son, my brother.
That's what I thought you said. How does he do it?
I'm sure I do not know. All I know is that he is waiting for us in the vestibule whenever we come in. The moment we step through the doorway, he, or it, whichever it may be, forces us to bend down and put our feet in the air and walk on our hands.
But,
And I do not like it. I demand that you put a stop to it immediately.
It was obviously a case that had been allowed to go too far already. And so he summoned Sergeant Minot and told him the sad story.
Apparently, Pierre, the whole family, stark raving mad. There is only one thing to do, I'm afraid.
Have them examined?
Precisely. And if I am correct, have them put away.
But since the magistrate was not at all certain that the Blorati family would come peacefully, he invited Sergeant Minot to accompany him to the Rue Montreuil that evening. The two men entered the apartment building just after dusk had fallen and made their way upstairs to the Blorati's door. The magistrate tested the knob gingerly.
We're in locked here. The door's unlocked. You wait right here. I will try to reason with them first. If that fails, if they resist, I'll call you. Oh, yeah. Help me. Pull him off me.
Pull who, monsieur? There is no one here.
Don't try to tell me there is no one. Let go. Let go, I say.
Monsieur, why are you lying down on the floor like that?
He's forcing me down. Get him off, I tell you.
What? I see no one. There is only you and I, monsieur. Monsieur, monsieur, do you realize what you're doing? You're walking on your hands.
And so the Plarati family was neither apprehended, nor examined, nor put away. In the report which was filed by the magistrate of the Saint Marguerite district, the only recommendation was that the apartment be disinfected because of the presence of some unknown malady. But no disinfectant could be found that was potent enough to destroy what was apparently not a malady, but a force, a supernormal force, a force incredible but true.